Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome out to this Echo Hydro Health training. Now, my name is Robbie Law, and tonight we have a very special guest, Dr. Michael Joseph. And Dr. Joseph is going to be sharing some of the dangers of herbicides specifically, and we're really going to focus in on one of the main herbicides. And depending on what you're looking at, whether it's government usage or commercial usage, one of the top herbicides used and very, very dangerous. And so we're here today to talk about solutions. We are going to discuss how dangerous some of these herbicides are, how they've entered into our water system, and what we can do about it right now. So thank you, everyone who is here live with us. And if you're watching us on a replay, thank you so much for spending your time. I always can appreciate when someone says, what can I do to get healthier myself, and can come out to a webinar and a training like this tonight. So I want to say special thanks, of course, to Dr. Joseph for being here. We are really going to geek out on water today. We're going to be discussing why water is so important, but we're also going to be discussing, the dangers of doing this incorrectly when we're not taking care of our own home when it comes to filtration and making sure that the water we have is very clean. So very excited to have Dr. Joseph share some of his expertise. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. And as I do that, I'll let you know what, a couple of great things that you can do in order to get a lot out of our training today. First and foremost, let me know if you can hear the sound inside the chat box really quickly, if you wouldn't mind. And Dr. Joseph, I'm going to go ahead and turn your video on here in just a minute. If you want to hit that video button. So we got your video back on. There you are. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Joseph.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Robbie, for having me.
Yeah, for sure. We're so excited to hear your expertise. And, instead of giving you a full background, I was on your website. I was, looking at what it is that you do. And we've had so many conversations over the last month. Thanks, George, John, Sue. I appreciate that. And feel free to join in the chat and hit any questions that you might have into the Q&A section as well. We're going to spend time near the end doing all of the question and answer that we need in order to get all your questions answered. But as Dr. Joseph and I have talked over the last month in preparation, one thing I noticed is this. I don't have time in my day to spend researching the things that he does. So I like to learn through him, because every phone call we had, he had discovered some new thing. And he's like, Robbie, you've got to learn this, and you got to understand what's happening out there. And I want to share this new thing about how, I've got this new discovery on what this, what glyphosate is doing. And so as we've been discussing this, I've realized I have a huge opportunity to sit in this seat and have someone who has, I don't want to say obsessed, Dr. Joseph, but you really, really like to spend your time researching and looking at the data and looking at what's actually going on. So I'm very excited to learn from you here today, as all of us are. So thank you once again for being here. And if you don't mind, Dr. Joseph, could you give us a bit of a background and tell us, what your specific form of medicine is and how you help people?
Well, I do appreciate the intro and the kind words. Before I get started, I just want to give a couple of acknowledgements. I want to give a shout out to my mom, who recently had a stroke, and we're working on the healing process. And we have a helper staying, Sarah, who's been doing a wonderful job helping me implement my protocol with her. And SFI Health, the home of Claire Labs, has sent us a big product donation to help me with my mom. So I wanted to give an acknowledgement and a thank you to them for giving us the opportunity to help my mom, and also to Echo, Robbie, and Audrey for putting this together, and for taking this seriously, because we came together because of an email I got from Audrey about this company's filtration system. And I asked, well, do you guys filter glyphosate? And she said, well, let me check. And she came back and said, yeah, we do. I said, show me the testing. And she immediately sent me a document that showed the testing, the third-party testing, that the Echo water filter removes 99.3% of the glyphosate that is present in water. So I said, well, we got to talk about this. And one thing led to another, and here we are. And as far as my background, I sort of got into this industry by accident. When I was in my mid-20s, I was very unhealthy. So I got involved with a school on like holistic nutrition. So I learned how to get myself healthy. And then people started coming up to me and saying, hey, what did you do? I said, well, I did this. I changed my diet. I got healthy. I stopped with the junk food. And they said, okay, well, how much do you charge? I said, for what? And they said, for a consultation. I want to do what you're doing. And then I said, well, okay, well, it's this amount of money and let's get started. And then I eventually started working with a medical doctor and with cardiac patients and retired firefighters and military veterans. And then just eventually moving on to natural medicine, getting my doctorate in natural medicine, and then kind of discovering that there is something called orthomolecular medicine that sort of changed my life. And I started studying the work of people like Linus Pauling and Tom Levy and Abram Hoffer. And I came up with this idea of something called drugless functional medicine. So I'm not a medical doctor, but what I do is I use the word drugless in front of functional to delineate between myself and what I do, and maybe more pharmaceutical based or a more medical approach to health. And for me, it's much more about what is part of human chemistry as opposed to what's alien to it. Like, for instance, glyphosate is a synthetic chemical that is alien to human chemistry. So the sort of motto or tagline of drugless functional medicine is the restoration of normal functionality back to the human organism or human body through the reestablishment of natural human chemistry. So I do a lot of work with vitamin C, which is why I got a pile of books over here on vitamin C to always reference. And that seems to be one of the major components that we're looking for, because human beings can't make vitamin C. So I just kept going down that rabbit hole and discovering more and more about the relationship between vitamin C and human chemistry, vitamin C and probiotics, vitamin C and our body's ability to detoxify. So here we are discussing glyphosate and discussing this insidious chemical that has a lot of controversy behind it. And we're going to discuss this more. I got a couple of pages of notes over here that will reveal some shocking facts that we need to consider before we use this stuff on our lawn, and before we look at this as if it's safe, which there are about 11 billion reasons as to why it isn't. And we'll go over that later. But my background really came about because I needed to get healthy. And so I learned how to do it for myself. And the only thing that I really do is I just share with other people what I did and what I currently do. And just with regards to my mom with the stroke, just to give you guys an example of how well what I do works, just what it does is for the first time in her life, her blood pressure is now down to normal levels. And we've done it without medication. Because now I finally had the opportunity to work with her, where now she can focus exclusively on healing, as opposed to being a home health aide at 80 years old working with our veterans. So she practically killed herself trying to help other people. So that's why the past couple of months I've been focused on that. And that's why I'm happy to get out here and to share some of the things that I've discovered by talking to some experts in the industry and getting firsthand information that I think is going to make a big difference for everybody who's listening. Oh, Robbie, you're still muted.
Thank you. I love having a second shot. I like this. I like the second shot here. I feel the same way. We are going to have, a lot of understanding really dropped on us. We get some knowledge bombs from you today. I love that. So as we share here today, I want everyone to keep in mind a few things. Now, when we have these trainings, we have them every Tuesday at 6 p.m. We bring different subject matter experts. And when those subject matter experts come on, I do my best to help facilitate what they understand, so that I will be able to, share some details that you'll be able to go home with and actually utilize in your life. So as we do this, don't just sit by idly. Set some goals. Set some goals about what your current habits are right now, what your current habit, your mindset, mentality towards water. We really consider ourselves the water organization here at Echo. We're looking to purify it. We're looking to make it as clean as possible. We're looking to enhance it with hydrogen when we can. But when we have actionable ways where we can improve our health, we have an obligation to follow through with whatever we can. So take some things home today from this training. This is a live training, and we're going to go about 60 minutes. And so you'll get a lot of understanding, but feel free to throw questions into the Q&A section so that we can discuss this. We're going to focus on herbicides, specifically glyphosate today, but we're going to talk about overall health as well. So we might mention vitamin C. We might mention a few things that you might be able to do. And as you do, write them down, and then write down the actionable items that you can use. Look for different things that you can do inside your home, of course, with your own personal health. When you do that, you're really going to be able to get a lot out of this. And like I said, we consider ourselves to be this water organization because water is the source of life. So we want it to be clean. And we have now found toxic chemicals that, when you look at all of the details on this, that are all over in our water, all across the United States and all across the world now, when it's microplastics and all these things that we're discovering are in our vital source that we need for all of our ancient systems to work, our mind, our heart, our cardiovascular, every system that we have. So, we're going to hear from Dr. Joseph on that. And every time we do this training, I want everyone to keep in mind that we do give a significant discount on a product here today. And the product that we're going to be discounting is going to be the whole home filtration system. So we're going to give a significant discount. I'll make sure and put that coupon code in as soon as I can. I'll enter it in. So at any time, if you want to go and get that discount, we do this every Tuesday. We have a product that we're going to, serve up and say, hey, there's, we're going to be able to get you this for this discount. And so today it's going to be that whole home filtration system. So look for that coupon code to jump up onto your screen, and it'll be a link that you'll be able to click. So before we do that, though, I want to dive back over to Dr. Joseph. And I want to just get in and just start talking about glyphosate in general. Like, what is it? What is glyphosate? And can you tell me what you've learned about it over these last couple of months as you really started to understand that's affecting our health specifically?
Okay, great. Well, glyphosate is an organophosphate. It's an herbicide that's used as a weed killer in industrial agriculture and in commercial applications. It's typically used on Roundup-ready crops, and Roundup is the product that glyphosate is found in. And these crops are genetically modified to be resistant to it. It's an analog of an important amino acid called glycine. Now, glycine is the most abundant, or one of the most abundant amino acids in the body, and it's involved in anywhere from melatonin and serotonin synthesis to glutathione, which is a master antioxidant. So it's involved in a lot of protein synthesis, including the formation of connective tissue called collagen, or the foundation of connective tissue called collagen. So this chemical works by inhibiting certain enzymatic pathways that cause the production of certain amino acids in plants. Now, human beings don't possess this pathway, but it doesn't mean that this chemical is not going to pose health risks. It's commonly used also to force crop to ripen and to increase immediate yield. So it's not just used on genetically modified organisms that are resistant to it. It's used deliberately to speed up the ripening process and also to possibly kill off old crops so they can plant anew. So it's not just used on as a weed killer. It's used as an enhancer for yields, and it can be on foods that you wouldn't even realize. Even though wheat is not genetically modified, it's still used in large amounts on wheat. It's found in a product, an herbicide called Roundup that we discussed, and it's the second most widely used herbicide in government and in commercial applications, whereas 2,4-D is the most widely used in commercial applications and also in home use. And 2,4-D goes by another name that I think a lot of you guys are familiar with, called Agent Orange. Now, Agent Orange is actually mentioned at the very beginning of First Blood Part 1, where John Rambo's friend, Delmar Barry, I'm a big Rambo fan, by the way. Delmar Barry,
Couldn't tell, Dr. Joseph. Keep going. Sorry, I don't want to throw you out.
But Delmar Barry is mentioned about, his mother or his family member mentioned that he died from that, Agent Orange stuff that he brought back from Nam. So it seems that this was just completely forgotten about, and now they've added it into Roundup. So you have glyphosate and 2,4-D, making 2,4-D the most widely used herbicide in the world, because now it's combined with glyphosate. So we have the two most dangerous chemicals that we can possibly put in our environment in the same product, to the tune where they've dropped something like 18 billion pounds of this since 1970 on humanity.
So can you tell me what it's doing? Like, I'm curious, and if you're okay, I'd love to play the skeptic today, because I love to do that and sit in that seat so that we get all the information, and it's not just like telling one side of the story. But can you tell me why are we so interested in this as humans, if it's so bad for us and we know it's so terrible?
Well, the way that it was promoted, the original use of glyphosate was in 1968, where it was used to strip mineral deposits off of pipes in various different plumbing applications. So for the first couple of years, it was used as an industrial chelator, basically to clean pipes. And then somebody discovered around 1970 that it could be used as an herbicide. So this allowed the widespread use of glyphosate in industrial and commercial farming to apparently give greater yields. And at first, farmers loved it, and then people started getting sick. And when genetically modified crops were created in the mid-1990s, the use of glyphosate skyrocketed. And I have all of these charts that I found where, when that happened, all of these different ailments that we have, like cancer, autism, leukemia, non-Hodgkin's, heart disease, diabetes, all of these things skyrocketed. So there has to be some sort of a relationship, just even from looking at that. And glyphosate is something that was cheap, and it had a lot of different industrial and commercial applications. So farmers loved it, gardeners, landscapers loved it. But what happened was there wasn't the right information that was put out there that this stuff was safe. I call it the 21st century version of DDT, because back in the 1940s and 50s, DDT was used indiscriminately, to the point where it was most likely causing what we were looking at in the 40s and 50s as the polio epidemic. And then once they got rid of it, polio seemingly disappeared. So there's a lot of controversy there as well.
All this controversy on a thing I don't know about. Tell me DDT really fast. All your acronyms, you got to remember, like, I'm not in your world. I like hear it and I go, oh, DDT, another thing.
Well,
another acronym I can be afraid of.
if you're familiar with WWF wrestling from the 1990s, DDT was the signature move of Jake the Snake. So, that's how I found out about it. But DDT was a chemical that was used to destroy a variety of different insects. It was an insecticide, and it was used against mosquitoes. It was supposed to prevent malaria from spreading, and it did none of these things. Instead, it was something that was being touted as being safe. And people were putting it in their cereal. They were spraying it on kids in the summertime to try and prevent them from getting bitten by bugs. And it just made people extremely ill, to the point where one day it was just banned. So you can't buy DDT and use it commercially anymore. Instead, we have other things that are used that are probably just as bad. And someday maybe we'll get to that. But the issue with glyphosate is that there's a lot of politics behind the science, where there are a lot of, I guess what Stephanie Seneff calls it in her book, Toxic Legacy. And she's a research scientist. She wrote this amazing book on this. If you have a chance to pick it up, I'll go into way more detail than I'm going into now. She calls it junk science, that there was junk science that was used to promote this, like science for sale almost. And she goes through a lot of details about how glyphosate is dangerous. But if we wanted to list a number of things that this has been related to, cancer, neurological issues, endocrine disease, reproductive issues, mineral depletion, destructive of digestive flora, liver disease, kidney disease, and the list just goes on and on of the different things that this is related to. So it got to the point where it was so bad that there were a number of lawsuits, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But glyphosate is the sort of chemical where we need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves from this, because one thing that we can say is that glyphosate is everywhere, and it's water soluble, so it can get into our water supply. And this is a relatively new phenomenon, and some states don't even allow for the testing of glyphosate in our water because they just think it's as safe as water. That's one of the marketing taglines, is that it's as safe as water, and it isn't. And when we start looking at the relationship between glyphosate and fungus, that's where we see that we have a real problem.
Yeah, you talked about it, and I don't want to get into the politics of it. I don't want to get into any of the like conspiracy theory of it, right, because there's some raw data that shows that there's proof that it's bad. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I've got a study that I can share, and I'll put it up on my screen so that you can see it. But in this study, it's talking about how damaging it is. But can you tell me about some of the lawsuits and some of the proof behind it being so dangerous?
Well, the lawsuits are really the key, because that's where we have full discovery, and that's where we're seeing things that were not released to the public. So as of December of 2022, Bayer Monsanto has paid out over $11 billion in U.S. dollars to settle the claims of nearly 100,000 lawsuits that glyphosate made the plaintiffs sick, gave them cancer, or other serious health issues. And in August of 2023, the Attorney General of New York State filed a lawsuit against Bayer, alleging that they deceived New York consumers by selling Roundup as an environmentally safe weed killer when the company knew or should have known that the product could cause cancer. And this is a big deal, because they're not just being sued by consumers, they're being sued by state and federal regulation agencies or regulatory agencies that Monsanto flat out lied, or they should have known, and they should have done their due diligence if they weren't lying. And that's a big deal. And Monsanto didn't even fight it. They just settled it out of court for $6.9 million. They just paid the fine. They didn't even bother fighting it. And the lawsuit was based on deceptive advertising, like basically lying to consumers, saying it was safe. And their tagline was, "It's as safe as water," which is, again, it was a complete lie, and they got busted for it. So there, that should tell us that if this stuff is so safe, then why are they just paying people to just get off their back instead of trying to prove, hey, this is really safe, it's not hurting anybody? And that's couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah,
and I shared a let me just disappear here for a second. I shared an article from the let's see, I think this National Institute of Health is where we got this one. But I shared, and you can kind of go through and check it out. But I also put the link in the comments, and if you go there, you'll notice that you'll see the in-depth study that was done and the toxic effects of glyphosate in the nervous system. And this was a very systematic review of it. Talks about all the issues and what's going on. And so for those of you that love to geek out, great article to kind of go through and see it. And we're not just here to talk about that side of it, but because it is such a big issue right now, and because it is such an important thing that's happening, this is why Dr. Joseph is here, is to kind of raise our understanding on this idea. So, I want to go a little bit deeper into glyphosate. And, you had mentioned, you keep coming to me with this discoveries. You'd be like, Robbie, did you know Agent Orange? And I was like, what? I didn't know. And then you said, you'd start talking to me about mold. And you said, I don't know that a lot of people have made this connection. So talk to me a little bit about what you discovered, that there is this relationship between glyphosate and mold.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a discovery that I made, but it's something that I found that few people are talking about.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of work with mold and mold toxicity and the relationship between mold and vitamin C. And a couple of years ago, I suspected that glyphosate must have had something to do with mold. And I said back in 2018 or 2019 that we were going to expect like this massive mold and fungal outbreak, that it was going to be something serious. And then a year later, we have this pandemic, and I said, well, there's a lot of similarities here to mold toxicity. So I kind of just looked into this, and I had a meeting with Jeffrey Smith, and Jeffrey Smith is the big GMO guy. He wrote the book Seeds of Deception and Genetic Roulette, and he really was one of the key pioneers in exposing the dangers of genetically modified organisms to the general population. So I met him in 2012, and then we talked in 2021, and then just recently we had another conversation, and he gave me this information from Dr. Don Huber, who is mentioned in the introduction of this book. And the first thing that he talks about is the relationship between glyphosate and mold. So apparently, Dr. Huber discovered that when, let's see if we can share my screen. Can we do that? It'll make it easier to explain this.
Yeah, I think we practiced that, so I think
yeah,
it
let me
should
go
work.
ahead and, okay, here it is. Okay, can you guys see this? Okay,
Yeah.
So these are some of the plant pathogens increased by glyphosate, and I want to draw your attention to something called Fusarium. Now, Fusarium is a type of mold that you see every day. You find it on moldy corn or moldy bread. It's kind of like a grayish, whitish type of mold, and it's very common. And Fusarium produces a specific type of toxin that we'll talk about in a second. And here we can see some diseases, plant-based diseases that are increased by glyphosate. But this is the key, this next slide here. Okay, so in glyphosate sterile soil, where it's just glyphosate itself with nothing else in it. It's just sterile soil with glyphosate added to it. It just merely stunted the growth of the plant. But when they took field soil that had the presence of a variety of different mold and fungi, it immediately killed the plant. And then in the no glyphosate control, the plant grew properly. And when we were talking about Fusarium, myself and Jeffrey Smith, I mentioned a chemical called zearalenone. I asked him if he's ever heard of it. He said, no, I'm not really familiar with that. Well, the very next slide he gave me mentions this chemical zearalenone, which is a known carcinogen, which is an analog to estrogen, and it is a highly toxic substance. And this was something that we found in large amounts with a breast cancer patient, that once we detoxified her from this particular chemical and removed the source, she started healing from the breast cancer. That was the first step that it took. But here we're looking at how this zearalenone chemical was found in this, on the chaff and straw of wheat in excess of clinically significant levels. So this is astronomically high levels of 42.9, 55.5. This is horrible. And glyphosate very well may be responsible for this increase in mycotoxins that we're seeing in these plants. And like I said, I do a lot of work with mold and a lot of work with fungi, and Fusarium is commonly confused with cancer. So this is an absolutely huge revelation that is just not being talked about in functional medicine as much. The relationship between the mycotoxin production and the presence of glyphosate. Glyphosate kind of acts like a superfood for these organisms. And fungi uses glyphosate as a food. This is where glyphosate becomes dangerous, because the most toxic substances known to man are produced by fungus. In fact, the most toxic substances in the world are made by fungus. So whatever glyphosate does, it is dwarfed by the chemicals produced by fungi, and glyphosate is a superfood, like a steroid
All right, get all those big words off my screen. I can't concentrate with all your big words, man. I'm trying to keep up with you, and I love what you're sharing because it's opening my mind to this. And as I'm listening, I'm saying, is this the beginning of the zombie apocalypse? Glyphosate plus fungus. You know, I don't want you to go there. As a WWF fan from the 80s, I feel like you might go there. So I'm going to caution. I'm going to say, let's not go there. But I want to say that, you know, it sounds like there is a major issue. You talked about 18 billion pounds or something, some number.
Yeah, that's what Stephanie mentioned in her book.
You know, and someone asked me actually, thank you, Lucinda, who's the author of Toxic Legacy? When you show it, the lighting you have kind of makes it hard to see. Can you hold it up one more time?
Sure, it's Stephanie Seneff.
There we go.
Okay. And you can find it.
For me.
Her last name is Seneff. Okay, and she's big sort of researcher into a lot of this environmental stuff. So you might also want to check out Genetic Roulette by Jeffrey Smith. And then feel free to go and check out my website, druglessfunctionalmedicine.com, for some other new ideas about a variety of different concepts. But you want to talk about geeking out, and these people blow me away. And I'm just scratching the surface. This is huge. And the first couple of chapters is like, hey, I've had enough. And it is pretty heavy duty stuff, especially when they start getting into the relationship between glyphosate and fungus. That is the key. It's not just glyphosate. Glyphosate is bad, but you can see in the example that I showed that glyphosate just merely stunted the growth of the plant. Whereas when it was put in field soil that actually had fungus in it, naturally occurring fungus, killed the plant because the plant couldn't detoxify from the multitude of fungal chemicals that were in the soil.
Now relate that to my body if you can. I know there's not a direct relation, and we're not here to prescribe or tell you, you know, what we can do to heal you or any of those things. There's my disclaimer for this. But tell me why that matters to the human body now.
Well, you have about 140 trillion microorganisms in your large intestine. And in 2000, glyphosate was patented as a powerful antibiotic. So if you consume glyphosate, even in small amounts, it's going to kill off all the good stuff in your gut. And here's the kicker. Here's the part that just blows your mind, is that the organisms that would become pathogenic, like yeast and fungi and Clostridia C. diff, which is probably the most deadly organism in the world, these things are immune to glyphosate. In fact, they feed off of it. Whereas bifidobacteria and lactobacilli, what we call probiotics, these organisms are highly susceptible to being poisoned and destroyed by glyphosate. So what it means for you is that when you consume something that has glyphosate, when you drink a glass of water that has glyphosate in it, you are effectively drinking an antibiotic that is selectively destroying the organisms in your gut that are supposed to help you and allowing the organisms to grow that want to eat you. So this is huge. This explains a lot of what I've seen with just these massive fungal outbreaks. Like you mentioned the zombie apocalypse. Let's call it the fungal apocalypse, where we're seeing people who have these destroyed guts that we've never seen this before. This has never happened before in human history. We've seen so many people with digestive problems. Of course, there are multiple causes, but we can't rule out the glyphosate factor because glyphosate is patented and utilized as an antibiotic. And if it's in your water, you're essentially drinking antibiotics, which is why I had this sense of urgency. Like, I got to do something with these guys. We got to talk about this because they've got a filter that can get this out. We can get it out of water using this filtration system that has the certification and has a third-party testing that tells us we're getting more than 99% out. And that's where I had that sense of urgency. I wasn't saying to Echo, like, hey, Echo, you know, let's do this. I had a real sense of urgency because this is what I was looking for, is a way of protecting and to defending ourselves against something that's a real serious invasive offense to our biological ecosystem, to our actual bodies. So what this ultimately means is that colonizing bacteria are getting ravaged. Apart from everything else that we're doing, the final nail in the coffin, the tipping point, I think, is glyphosate. And I think the major way that we're being contaminated is through the water supply. And I have evidence of that.
Yeah, and next week we're going to be talking with Dr. Paul on the same time frame, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We're going to be talking about forever chemicals and the challenges there. And when we talk about what we can do, you've mentioned filtration as an option. That there's things that we can do with filtration. In fact, I'm going to throw this offer out there so everyone's got it. I just put an offer out there that's 25% off the whole home filtration system. You are welcome. So that's our daily deal today. So thank you, Dr. Joseph. You're the one that inspired this. And, as we talked about, how can we do our part here at Echo to help people get there is, our whole home filtration system at 25% off gives you a great opportunity to do that right. And if you have any questions, support at echoh2o.com is a great resource. Shoot them an email and you can find out any of the questions that you might have. But this whole home filtration system is a system that will remove the majority of what is getting in our way health-wise. I asked Dr. Paul about this. I said, when we filter water, what is the benefit in doing that? It's essentially we're stopping as much as we can of what would really not be natural for our body. So heavy metals, pesticides, herbicides, things that are, not natural for our systems that are really preventing it. And so whole home filtration is a great way to do that. So make sure you check out that offer. Like I said, next week, we're going to be talking about forever chemicals and how that, those are things that we need to be aware of as well. But getting back to glyphosate, it's such a nasty, when it comes to what else I can do. Okay, now let's say some glyphosate has snuck into my system. Give me some things that I can do so that I can remove that from my body.
That's an excellent question. Before we get to it, would you mind if I shared my screen again and showed the third-party testing about the filter? Because I think this is important.
I actually have it as well. So let me I've got it queued up. So I'll just pull it up really fast. If you don't mind.
Okay. There you go. I just wanted to show this over here where glyphosate has shown a 99.3% reduction after filtration. Now, this is third-party testing that was done by Paul, who is the founder and CEO of Echo. And this is what inspired me to work with Robbie and to put this together with Echo to share with people that 99.3% plus is pretty significant. So here we're seeing that this filter gives us the starting point that we need to reduce our exposure. And I think that the major source of glyphosate exposure right now is through the water. And a couple of other things that we need to recognize is that I called a number of different filtration companies. One that I had put on my system back in 2020, and a couple of other companies, some popular ones that I won't name here, but they couldn't tell me what they filtered. I asked them, well, what specific chemicals do you filter out of your water? And they said, well, we have to get you to a salesperson. Like, I'm not interested in talking to a salesperson. I'm interested in talking to somebody in your company that understands what the heck you're selling. And why are you selling a water filtration system, a reverse osmosis system, where you can't tell me what you're filtering? They didn't even know what glyphosate was. And so what's that? I said, it's one of the most widely used herbicides in the world. And so, okay, we'll get you to a technical advisor. And technical advisor had no idea what I was talking about. So they couldn't tell me what specific chemicals they would pull out of the water. And I actually got it in writing from one of their specialists and said, we're not third-party certified. So we don't know what we filter out of our water. We can't confirm what we filter out. We just know it comes out. I said, well, this is amazing. This is a waste of a couple $1,000s for me. So if you guys are considering getting a filtration system, I think the only option is Echo, because the document that I just showed you, and the document that Robbie has, and the foresight and the insight that Paul had, the founder of the company, to do this type of testing, shows you that it's worth it, and that they understand that this stuff needs to come out of the water. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point. And the fact that we don't have this type of we can't confirm. We can't get the actual testing done from these other companies is so unbelievably frustrating. So this is something where I feel really strongly about this, why I feel like we should be utilizing this type of filtration the same way that we would use like any type of, clean water initiative. Now, to answer Robbie's question, unless he has another one.
No, I've got multiple, but I want you to finish. Go ahead.
Okay. So to answer Robbie's question, the first thing, I made a kind of like some bullet points over here. And anybody that contacts me through the site, I can send you a copy of my notes over here because there's no way we can get to all of this today. Because I got 3 pages of notes here that I think are really important. But the most important section is what can we do to protect ourselves? And the first thing is we got to be aware that it's everywhere. It's water soluble, and so much of it's been used that even if you have the most perfect organic diet, during the pandemic, I had a really great control. A couple that lived out in the villages over in Florida, and we did a lot of environmental testing on them. We did glyphosate testing. Now, these are people that were sheltering at home, were not leaving their home, had, reverse osmosis filtration on their water, ate 100% organic. They still had incredibly high levels of glyphosate when I tested their urine and I tested their water. It was through the roof. So it's everywhere. So that's the first thing we need to do. Second thing is do the best that you can to eat organic and to eat non-GMO as much as possible. The third thing is we've got to get this filtration system. We have to filter our water with a filter that has third-party certification like the document that I just showed you. Echo is the only company that I found where they have that. And then you also have the options of getting the hydrogen water, and hydrogen is a powerful antioxidant, and that helps with the detoxification as well. So, Echo is really the first step to making sure that we protect ourselves. The second thing is contact me through my website, and I will get you information about what I call the vitamin C dynamic flow protocol. This will help significantly with the detoxification of just about every chemical that you could be exposed to. Also, using things like sauna and magnesium baths, very important for detoxification, not just for glyphosate, but the mycotoxins that the glyphosate increases. And I do a lot of work with using vitamin C and using sauna and magnesium to help detoxify. And for serious mold toxicity, we would do mycotoxin testing, but also there's an IVC, an intravenous vitamin C protocol that I've utilized to do about 9 to 12 months worth of detoxification in a matter of days. So what the first 3 or 4 points anybody can do. And if we do those 3 or 4 things, the awareness, changing your diet, also don't use Roundup. If you've got a gardener or a landscaper, especially in Florida, everybody's got landscapers, don't use Roundup. Get it away from your property as much as possible. Get your neighbors to stop using it. Share information with them and say, that stuff is going to make you sick, because what's going to happen is it's going to blow over on your property or it's going to leach into your water. So don't use Roundup. Be aware that this stuff is everywhere. Get this filter, because like I said, other companies that I contacted cannot tell me if they filter anything. And we know for a fact that this filter gets this stuff out of the water. And then also the vitamin C protocol, I think, is essential, because it will not only keep you healthy, but it'll get the stuff out of your body much more effectively before even going into the mycotoxins or the an intravenous protocol. So,
yeah.
And anybody that goes ahead and contacts me through the website, I'll give you guys a copy of this so that you can have it for your own.
Yeah, can you drop your website into the chat box?
Sure.
You can save if you throw it in there. And there's some questions in here that I want to go ahead and go back to. There's 3 of them. We're going to start with
how do I get to the chat box over here?
Don't worry about it. What's your website? I'll put it in there. What is it?
It's all one word, druglessfunctionalmedicine.com.
There we go, right there in the chat box. Now I want to go back to
contact.
And we have some, by the way, very, very smart people on this training right now.
Sure.
And so they're asking questions where I'm like, oh, well, I'm really glad we have Dr. Joseph, because I know nothing about this. So Tara McDonald, thank you for your questions, by the way, Tara. And she threw a great link in that kind of shows a really big study on glyphosate. So really cool. But Tara asked, are there any pathways or connections with glyphosate and these other toxins with non-cancerous pituitary secreting tumors? Very specific.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's any question. I just don't have the data or the evidence offhand. But if you're talking about something that by itself in a controlled environment, at the very least stunts the growth of the plants it's supposed to affect, it's going to have an effect on the pituitary gland. In fact, it's a known endocrine disruptor. And anything that's going to disrupt your endocrine system is going to have an effect on your pituitary gland, your thymus, your hypothalamus, your adrenal glands. And one thing that we have to consider too is that a substance like glyphosate is highly oxidative. And when you have something that's that powerful of an oxidative substance, it's going to use up your body's natural antioxidants. And the fact that we don't make vitamin C, which is nature's antitoxin, it is going to cause serious vitamin C depletion and may even be responsible for causing symptoms of what we would identify as scurvy, because it just uses up so many of these antioxidants in the body, and we can't replenish vitamin C fast enough because we can't make it. So I think when we're talking about the pituitary gland, I don't think there's any question. I just don't have the evidence offhand. But yeah, anything that's an endocrine disruptor is going to affect the pituitary gland. And glyphosate is a powerful endocrine disruptor.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about is getting together on a study. We're looking to get funding for the study right now to do some more research on these types of things. When we talk about, what has been done up to this point to try and determine what's going on, there's still so much more research to do. And so that's why your information is so valuable, raising our awareness, helping us make, make an impact where we can. You had mentioned glyphosate being an endocrine disruptor, which is interesting because there was another question I want to throw out. This is from Gail, who's had some great questions as well. Thank you, Gail. Is glyphosate an endocrine disruptor? And if so, what is the relationship between glyphosate and endocrine disruption?
That's a great question. But yeah, it's been found to be an endocrine disruptor. And there is something that I picked up on over here. Let me just go ahead and grab it. There is some information. Let me see if I can find it here. 1 second. Okay.
While you're talking about that, if someone wants to contact you, what is the easiest way for them through your website? Is there an email address? Is there a contact page?
Yeah, there's the contact page with the phone number. And you can also just fill out the contact form, and we can go from there. Okay, I've got the information here right in front of me. Here, endocrine disruption, fertility, and reproductive concerns. A study in the environmental pollution in a paper called Environmental Pollution investigated the potential effects of low levels. Now, this is low levels of glyphosate. Exposure from weaning to adult life in male rats on hypothalamic pituitary thyroid, the HPT axis. Various changes suggest that glyphosate may affect several steps of HPT axis regulation. So basically, it has a serious effect on the thyroid. And if we look at other concerns, we're talking about an increase in mortality, infant mortality, birth defects, lower birth weight, glyphosate detected in the urine of residents of rural and urban environments. There was a correlation between farmers' exposure to glyphosate and thyroid hormone levels. So there's a significant, there's just a ton of this stuff over here where they're talking about the relationship between glyphosate exposure and the thyroid. So that.
If you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit because I'm sitting here thinking about glyphosate, and I'm thinking just of drinking it. Mm-hmm. But now I'm sitting here thinking I love to take baths. Mm-hmm. I know that's like too much information. I get it, everybody. But when I'm laying in water, or when I'm showering, or when I'm doing my hair, or I'm brushing my teeth, or I'm doing these things, is glyphosate able to get to me besides drinking it, or is there other ways it's happening?
There's no question. I mean, you can breathe it in because it can be dissolved in the air. I mean, people are exposed to it by breathing it in. It's water soluble, so it's going to be in the water. If it's in your water, it's in your bathtub. So the whole health filter is an option, but something else that you might want to do is understand how to take a bath. So from 101 degrees to about 103 degrees, your body is absorbing more of what's in the water than it's excreting. Once you reach the temperature of about 104 degrees, you're starting to excrete more than you're absorbing. So hotter baths are used with magnesium and baking soda to help with the detoxification process, because your skin is the largest and most versatile and dynamic detoxification organ. So magnesium, using magnesium in your bath can help prevent, in my opinion, based on what I've seen and just based on the theoretical nature of what magnesium can do, it can probably help mitigate the absorption of a variety of different chemicals in the water. I also use baking soda too. And I'm just like you, I have to soak in a magnesium bath because that's also one of the ways that we get magnesium. Magnesium is very difficult to get from our diet in any appreciable amount. So absorbing it transdermally in a hot magnesium bath between 101 and 103 is beneficial. It might actually prevent the uptake of glyphosate. I mean, I don't have a study for that, but we've been using magnesium baths and baking soda baths as a means of detoxification in my practice for a while now. So keep that in mind. Get yourself a little rubber ducky thermometer, and when it reaches 104, when it reaches 100, 104, that's when you're excreting, and that's where the baking soda in the water is going to help. And you have to make sure that you stay hydrated. So if you're using water at all in your house, you're very likely going to be exposed to even small amounts of glyphosate. But even those small amounts, it builds up if you continue to use the water that has this stuff in it. So if we can get at least 99% of that out, I feel a lot more comfortable at that point.
Yeah, that's what the whole home filtration system does. So for those of you that don't know, the whole home filtration system is something that we are going to install right as the water is entering into our home. Once it's there, now it's going through the whole home filtration system. It's got all sorts of, I think there's 9 different, areas where it's actually doing filtration. And so when you look at this whole home filtration system, now I'm going to shower cleaner, I'm going to bathe cleaner, I'm going to clean my food cleaner, I'm going to drink cleaner. Everything is happening that way. So definitely look into it. Definitely look at that as an option. So I've got a couple more questions that are jumping into the box, and now we're reaching that time where we're running out of time, and I want to make sure we get all of the questions answered. So now is the time. For those of you that are on, throw any questions that you got for Dr. Joseph on there. We've got his time right now. We've got his attention. It's very valuable time, and we're grateful for that opportunity. So make sure you throw those into the comments section. So first of all, Tara asked for a link to the thyroid study. So if you don't mind sending that over to me, then I'll put it on there. Or if you go to the chat,
there's tons of them. There are tons of them. You look up in your search engine, glyphosate and thyroid, you'll get like 1 million or 2 million hits on it. It is just ridiculous how many studies have been done on glyphosate and thyroid. So I was just randomly reading stuff off that I got off search, but there are tons upon tons upon tons of this stuff that you can find, and it's not a secret. So it's not like it's not known. That's why the company is just paying these settlements, because they know it. They know that they're poisoning people, and they just simply don't care.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions.
Sure.
Some are just like random, one-off questions. But Lucinda, I skipped yours. Sorry about that. Coming back to it, scanned back down and found one. She said, "Is soil a good filter reducing glyphosate presence in well water sources?"
See, I have a well water, and it's dug deep. We don't know. And I know that when I first got to this particular property back in early 2020, before we were involved in the pandemic, I got horrifically ill. And I was developing symptoms of what we would call, like rapidly developing scurvy. I know it sounds bizarre, but I got very, very ill within about 3 or 4 weeks of being here. And I'm on about 2 acres of property in the middle of Central Florida, which is like the glyphosate rapid roundup capital of the world. I got really ill, and it took me a couple of days to recover. And the only thing that would help me recover was taking some liposomal vitamin C. So I found out about a year later that when I got in touch with the gardener who was here before I moved in, who was taking care of the property for the real estate company, he was bragging to me about how much Roundup he used on the property. He said, "Oh yeah, we used all this Roundup, got rid of all the weeds, and oh, it made the place look beautiful." I'm like, "Yeah, and you nearly killed me." So I made the connection, and I talked to my teacher, Dr. Kurt Wohler, who's like my mentor and my colleague. And we were discussing this. He said, it's possible that you had glyphosate toxicity that led to mold toxicity. And I said, that's not out of the realm of possibility. So we don't know if this stuff is getting into well water, and soil is not a great filter in general. Once you start getting to the lower levels of the lower strata, that's where you start getting to like more porous rocks that can filter this stuff out. But even the stuff that was coming out of my well water, it wasn't 100% clean. I had to get a filtration system from a company that can't tell me what they filter. So I don't know how to answer that question because I can't answer it for myself. And every single company that I talk to, like I'll talk to these well specialists in town. They don't know what glyphosate is, number one, and they don't know what fungus is, number two. I talked to them like, have you done any sort of fungal detoxification? Have you gotten fungus out of water? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's so frustrating because we don't have these answers. And I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't have one for myself. And I have well water. The only solution is to get the filtration to make sure that at least we're covering this and making sure that whatever it is in the water that we're getting rid of it. So I wish I had because I've been searching for that answer for 3 years now.
Well, I appreciate you being cautious. When you don't know an answer, it's better to go, hey, I don't know an answer on that. However, I think we really do understand that glyphosate is an issue, and it can be an issue in a well water if it's getting into the well. So
yeah, well, we can test for it. So if somebody wants to go ahead and test their water, just contact me and I'll get them a testing kit. And that's the key, is that we can go ahead and we can test for it. And even small amounts need to come out, because small amounts build up in your body if you just continue to be exposed to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Now I've got a coupon code. I've had a couple people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm going to the site. It's not showing my discount. When you add it to the cart, the discount should show up once you do that. So add it to the cart and it'll update and you'll see the 25% discount. If you need the coupon code, it's Pure Water 25, and don't tell anyone. I'm not supposed to have like a coupon code. It's supposed to be attached to it. But if you're having an issue, I want you to be able to get the filter that can help you and your family. So Pure Water 25 will be that 25% off for that. So you can put that in as a coupon code if it's not populating for you. So I also wanted to throw one more discount in because we've got a reverse osmosis system. And someone asked, can activated carbon filters remove glyphosate? And the answer is, we didn't test an activated carbon filter when we did it. We tested the whole home filtration system, which has activated carbon as a stage, but we have an entire system. So we're going through 9 stages, in the whole home filtration. So
yeah, activated carbon is just one part of a reverse osmosis system. So it's not going to, I've never seen any test where an activated carbon block has been able to pull out glyphosate. In fact, very few companies have tested, but activated like an activated carbon block it's just one part of reverse osmosis. So reverse osmosis is the gold standard. So if we have a home system, if you can get both, hey, the more the merrier. I have a reverse osmosis system that has not been tested, so I'm completely on board with using this filtration system because I think it's the best one that I've seen looking at the technical specs. And I'm a big water filter guy. That's my
I added a coupon into the chat for a 10% off the reverse osmosis system. I did that just because I'm just crazy. I don't need approval for stuff like that. I want you guys to get your filtration. So I threw one in there for the reverse osmosis. So another good discount for that filtration system if you want to jump on that. Next week, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking to Dr. Paul. And as we talk to him about forever chemicals, PFAs, we're going to be sharing some, additional ideas around filtration. So you'll definitely want to jump back on, and Dr. Paul's going to go into depth on our products and our filtration process so that we can learn even more than we have today. So, I want to say thank you to Dr. Joseph. I don't see any more questions popping up in the Q&A section. If you do have any, feel free. Now is the time. I want to give you some last words, some advice, some ideas for everyone. What are some things that, that are on your mind right now that we can do so that we can protect our family and that we can, that we can live a healthier lifestyle? And it can be anything.
For me?
Yes, for you.
Well, the first thing you can do, if we're talking about from a nutritional or a biological standpoint, is find the deficiency first. There are lots of different great things you can do out there with eating organic and using special types of cleaners in your house that don't have volatile compounds. You could do all kinds of great things. But the one thing that we need to recognize more than anything else is the fact that human beings are one of four mammals on the face of the earth, including mammals in the ocean, that do not make vitamin C. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to solve that. And this man over here, Erwin Stone, great health writer, wrote this book in 1971, one of the greatest health books ever written. And he says that every single person on the planet right now is battling scurvy. From the second that we're born, we are at war with scurvy. So my suggestion is start with that. Start with utilizing vitamin C. And if you need more information on this, you know where to contact me through druglessfunctionalmedicine.com. There's some articles on there. There's one that just went up about how the EU has approved various health benefits of vitamin C that have just been ignored here in the States. So vitamin C is the key. And everything that we do with clean water, once we get the water taken care of, the next step is the single most important nutrient that we need to supplement with, and that's vitamin C. So if you want to do something to make a big difference in the lives and the health of your families, your kids, your grandparents, your mothers and fathers, your coworkers, your friends, your neighbors that you don't like, get them on the vitamin C bandwagon, because you will see a dramatic change in your health if you have regular, consistent, properly utilized vitamin C on a day-to-day basis. And for more information on that, definitely contact me through the website. I can certainly help you. It's not that complicated. It's not expensive, but it's something that we all need to do, because we're just at an adaptive disadvantage. Whereas a frog or a rabbit or a rat or a killer whale have got adaptive advantages that we don't have, because they make their own vitamin C. And look at the diseases that guinea pigs have, same as human beings. That's why they're used in many experiments, because their biochemistry is almost identical to ours. Wow.
Very good stuff. Vitamin C is something that wasn't on my mind until I started talking to you about a month and a half ago. So I'm going to do everything I can to continue looking at that. Thank you for raising my awareness. Thank you for raising our awareness today. Your time is valuable to us. We appreciate it. I want to throw a special, healing message out for your mother, and for all those that have helped support her and in her continued journey. My younger sister, if I could also say the same, my younger sister just recently had a stroke, is paralyzed on her right side. And, all the love and healing that we can get for people like that are, going through something where their physical ailments are now, preventing them from having the maximum amount of movement. Our health is so important. We should never take it, for granted. And a training like today helps us remind us of that. So special love for your mom, for my little sister, and for all those that are in need right now. But thank you once again, Dr. Joseph, for your time, your expertise, and really your obsession with making sure that we can learn about being healthier. I appreciate it.
Let's just call it a commitment. Thank you,
Very
Robbie.
committed.
Take care,
Very,
everybody.
very
Pleasure
committed. Yeah,
doing
looking forward to doing some future work with you, Dr. Joseph. Take care.
You got it,
Thank
my
you,
friend.
everyone.
Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
We'll see you.